We are going to go into right now the impact of virtual replica on city infrastructure and utilities. So this concept of digital twinning, which is a term I just learned this morning, but it came up more than once. And so what our next panel discussion will go through is how do we chart a path to digital transformation using digital twinning for acute predictive analysis? And predictive analysis, it's just funny because in the previous response, I wrote down predictive analysis without even looking at what we had below here.
It's predictive.
It's happening. But I think the idea here, more importantly, is the idea of the human factor influencing technology available to us to be able to make decisions going forward. So it's not just staying static. I want to introduce Amar Singh, who is the Executive Vice President, Commercial Advisory at Infrastructure Ontario. Welcome to the stage. And Tovit, who is from
Yellow Bricks,
who's going to help us kind of have an open conversation between the two of you. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much.
And go ahead.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'll introduce myself. I'm Tovit Neiser. I'm a business storyteller. I help companies, organizations, and executives communicate their unique value proposition and story with their stakeholders internally and externally. And maybe you'll start by introducing yourself, Amar.
Yeah, for sure. Good to be here. Good to be in person. We're talking about digital twins, but the digital twins are used to build physical spaces, so it's important to be here. I also want to say we have a few friends here from IO, Tom and Anthony. They're probably at the back of the class, so when we get to hard questions, you can save it for them.
They're way too far in the back.
Yeah.
I saw that hand like you're in the corner.
Yeah. So look, I'm privileged to serve on the executive team at Infrastructure Ontario. I'll zoom out a little bit, Tovit, and then kind of zoom into our practice area. Probably just introduce the topic of what
yourself.
And myself. Yeah, introduce the topic of. See, you're helping the storytelling. Introduce the topic of digital. What is a digital twin? What are we talking about? And then I think we're just going to have a little chat, a little conversation. So Infrastructure Ontario, many of you probably know it's an agency of the provincial crown, charged with a big portion of the province's build agenda, manages a lot of the province's assets and real estate. The commonality across everything we do is through partnerships, partners with public sector, parts of government, other governments, different levels of governments, and the private sector to accomplish some sort of policy objective. The area that I'm privileged to serve is called the Commercial Advisory Team. There's sort of three limbs to that practice. One is driving the province's connectivity agenda. So how do we get everyone and everything ultimately connected in the province? That's driving a big fiber deployment, mainly rural broadband across Ontario. We might get into some of that about how we did that through digital tools and data sharing. The other limb of the practice is around, we're not really using the words digital twin because it gets focused on the thing itself as opposed to the value that it brings. And the words that we're using more often are around how do you digitize the built environment. And when you digitize the built environment, you can start to modernize construction practices and construction activities across the value chain. And the third limb of our practice is around partnering with public and private sectors to think about how you would modernize, taking a broad view of infrastructure, how you would partner for capabilities to help ministry clients and ministry partners modernize their service delivery. So not just the physical spaces, but the partnerships that they have with some of these sponsors on the board to deliver a public good. And increasingly public goods are digital, not just physical spaces. So that's a little bit about where I sit within Infrastructure Ontario, and a little bit about our practice. I think we're going to get into the second limb, which is around digitizing the built environment.
So maybe let's dive straight to that. Is there any part of one of the limbs of the three, or any operation at the infrastructure, that takes hold or make use of this digital digitized environment? Do you have it in place?
Yeah, so that's a good place to start. So I'll caveat, we're probably at the very beginning of a journey here. We're inspired by other jurisdictions and places around the world that are ahead of us in some places and behind us in some places. The place where we're at right now, so I'll take a life cycle view. So imagine a value chain from you and I decide that a piece of infrastructure is needed.
Hospital.
A hospital,
Okay.
right. We do need,
Always.
if we don't fix the upstream problem around wellness, we will increasingly need more and more hospitals to take care of people when they're sick, so need a hospital. That's conceptualized in parts of government. It hits Infrastructure Ontario at a point where we're bringing something to market in RFX, RFP documents. There's tons of information loss as you kind of go through the life cycle. You plan, you have a set of partners to plan, you lose information. You have a set of partners to build, you lose information. You have an operating period, you're lucky if you get 2D manuals and drawings, as opposed to a live replica of the digital asset. So the problem that we're trying to solve, it's not that the data doesn't exist. It's akin to the former the last discussion that we just had. The data exists. It's trapped. So where we're at right now is we have a set of proof of concepts. We're meeting some of our project partners where they are. We're realizing that what we don't need to do is create kind of cost and compliance to the market. We don't think that we need to be the central clearinghouse where all the data needs to come in. All that's going to do is give us insight, but it's not going to actually enable the partners and the stakeholders on the ground that need to modernize their practices to take time and cost and friction out of the life cycle. Mm-hmm. So we're learning right now from a set of proof of concepts, frankly, way far downstream in the construction phase. And we're finding incremental benefits, but one of the biggest insights is you have to really start much, much earlier. And as you're building
before coming to infrastructure.
Well, take IO out of it, but if you're twinning any asset, if you're building any asset, whether it's a house or a hospital or a transit system, if you start way upstream and you're building the twin, you're building the digital version of the asset alongside engaging the right market participants to build the physical thing, you're giving those stakeholders and those partners superpowers to take time and cost and friction out of the, and really modernize the way things get built. Mm-hmm. So that another kind of zoomed out fact, you look at every sector in the economy. There's a study done almost 8 years ago or so. It looked at all different sectors of the economy, agriculture, tech, fintech, and so on. The AEC sector, architecture, engineering, and construction, flat in terms of productivity. Every other sector going up and to the right. Actually, we were second last. Agriculture was below, but since then, agriculture has made leaps and bounds. Autonomous farming and so on. And there's this. I don't know how to really corner the problem, but there is this lack of productivity improvement in that part of the economy. I think that's why we're seeing the build agenda just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and our ability to meet that build agenda is mired in silos, friction, cost, rework. So what we're finding is through these proof of concepts, can we meet our project partners where they are? Can we build capabilities at the edge? And I think the role for government is around asking for the right things. So through standards, through interoperability, mm-hmm. focusing on the right value use cases, so that we can enable the market to fundamentally change the way they work, be more competitive, and ultimately save money for the people that pay for the stuff. Okay,
so speaking of people, and I guess all of us are in a way your customers, it's very tangible for us. It's the congestion, yeah. Right? It's the hospitals, it's the road and potholes. How do you take us into consideration in this planning, digitize on analog?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think I think there's way more opportunity here. So let's take the hospital example. How is the citizen engaged in designing a facility, whether it's a hospital or any facility? Probably not that much, right? I think the floor plates, the way in which, like, it hasn't really changed all that much. Not just the citizen as the patient in that example, but think of anyone that's working in the hospital.
Doctors,
Right.
nurses.
Right. The power in this is if you can start to build early replicas, right? And it's not that you don't do this today. You do this. You do the early planning phases. You do the site prep. You do the data exists. It just doesn't build and stack into a video game type environment, and it can. So I think the power here is, can you port, whether it's months or a year before a facility is ready to open its doors, can you start training programs well in advance for getting people familiar with the environment, how to run a shift, right, in a virtual reality headset? Even further upstream, can you find entirely different ways to engage the citizen and other stakeholders in how the neighborhood is going to change?
Survey, listening to what they need.
Actually experience gamify the experience, right? So I think all of this is, I don't think these are necessarily the primary reasons for doing this. I think there's immense, I keep saying this, cost, friction, time that can be just, if you have the right sort of change management and first principles mindset, if you had the data, you could reinvent the way you initiate or adjudicate a permit. You could have an entirely different way of scheduling different teams. Like these big infrastructure projects, there's we've looked at the studies, there's 100,000 documents that get created, right? Between permits and designs, and there's about while you sign a contract with an entity, there's about 300 entities that are involved. Some are directly involved as subs, some are utilities and permitting agencies and so on. So it's entirely decentralized. If you can find ways to, again, focus on value-added use cases, make the data available, drive the change in reinventing the way things are done. I think one of those things are about how you engage the citizenry or the users of the assets, but we're not there yet. We're still trying to solve for the how do you take time and cost and friction out of the build cycle.
So you talk a lot about great ideas, but very hypothetical, and it's not there yet. Are these ideas and examples come from other places that it is implemented around the world? You mentioned in the beginning, other countries. How is that?
Yeah, for sure.
Comparison.
So some of the places that we're inspired by, we actually have a partnership with a couple entities. We have a partnership with the UK government.
Okay.
They're, I would say, 3 years ahead of us. They've done they've created an ecosystem, and these are the words that we're using. It's not a project, we're building a capability across the economy, really. And for that, you're really building an ecosystem. So what the UK has done, that we're, again, inspired by, they've brought academia, industry, and policy, government together to crack some of these big change management hurdles. One of those areas that they've excelled at, and again, we're learning from them quite directly, is something called the National Underground Asset Register.
Okay.
And it's a long string of words, but it's really about what's in the ground, so gas, electric, telco, all the utility data. And when we're bringing a project to market, a big transit project, 50% of that is utility upgrades and relocation. Every project that, whether it's me upgrading my fence in my backyard or the Ontario line, there's inevitable utility conflicts and collisions, hopefully not. You can go beyond damage prevention and get access to that data. So we're learning from the UK right now on how Again, they've used standards, voluntary, and now legislative compulsions to unlock that data, not just from a damage prevention, like let's not hit that gas line, but from an infrastructure coordination. How do you turn conflicts into cohesive upgrade projects and just better coordination upfront? If you walk down the street, I walked here, you're going to see spray paint and red flags on the ground.
We talked about it the other day, yeah.
That's a phenomenon. I don't see it. You travel in other parts of the world, you don't typically see that. You see it a lot in North America. But that's the interface.
It's like a language. I see the signs. Do I understand them or not?
Right.
I see markings in gray or red or green. Is it for me or is it for the engineers?
Well, yeah, but that's the interface. Like that's the way an excavator will know where to hand dig, where to directional drill, and so on. We can move like the way the UK has done it, and we're learning. And other parts, Australia has done this, and other parts they brought their damage prevention down to zero. Not prevention. They brought their utility conflicts down to zero
By digitizing
by
everything?
unlocking the data, freeing the data. So there's a big question about reliability. Like, can you trust the data? Is it accurate? But once you do, once you can, you get a cycle of innovation around that. You're able to see the data not through flags and spray paint, but as you're designing the model, if you have access to that data, you can see, oh, well, I'm gonna hit that pipe there. Maybe I can plan around it. Maybe we have a shared infrastructure project to change the makeup of the underground. So that's one example around, like we use the words utility coordination, unlocking the data from what's underground. Can fundamentally take what is right now a big area of risk and unknowns to big projects. So that's one place. Another jurisdiction that we've been following, I think you type in digital twins or go to ChatGPT and ask what are some of the leading jurisdictions is Singapore. So Singapore's taken a very standards-driven approach. It started 12 years ago, catastrophic floods in the island city-state. And they have gone to the point where they have standards. They use something called IFC classes, industry foundation classes. Anyways, it's a common way of thinking about how you codify the physical world into the digital world. They've gone further. They have their own Singapore IFC. I think they've gone ahead from the standards. But they're at the point where they're running permitting and approvals through the same, it's called BIM, so building information models. So they're using the BIM models that you would use for construction and design to solve the permitting issues. That happens now, but it's done for a particular use. So if you can just, again, free the data, make it interoperable, the use cases start to stack up on top of itself.
So Singapore is like number one, and then England, UK in the middle, and Canada 3 years back. Is that the chronology?
Yeah, I don't even know how to rank it, but I do think that what we have to check ourselves to make sure we don't have some confirmation bias. But what we're finding is that when government can clarify the rules, right? It's not necessarily the game player, but the game maker. If it can clarify the rules through standards, driving interoperability, and not necessarily being jumping to that they need to be the custodian of all the data, but really pushing it out to the edge so that the market can innovate. It's less about the twin and it's more about the modernization. Mm-hmm. How are you driving productivity? How are you turning that AEC flat productivity line and catching it up to fintech and retail and other sectors of the economy that have leapfrogged over.
And what is needed for this to really be a reality tomorrow in the next 4 or 5 years? Yeah,
so the other partnership that we have is with TMU. So we have a research partnership with Toronto Metropolitan University. They're helping us stretch our thinking a little bit. They're running alongside some of these proof of concepts that we have. They've got this incredible living lab. They've twinned some of their campus. It was kind of meta. It was getting a tour of the building that was twinned. Anyways, the lab that they have 500,000 data points coming at them every day. And it was on purpose, right? So they do anything from, a piece of machinery and this equipment, the stuff that you don't see behind the walls or in the basement. You either replace them on a run to fail, like wait till they break, or you have a schedule of replacing. They've done it in a way that the sensors will talk to them. And the field of research that they have is called cognitive twins, I believe, where the twin is sort of like Starship Enterprise. The twin is telling you, okay, you should replace this now. Okay. So the thing that's, I'm getting to your question. The thing that's I think the biggest hurdle, like why not now, what's preventing it, is the change management. So just because they have these capabilities, are the facility teams in their own, and TMU, adopting that, changing with it? That requires a cycle of change management and trust. How do I trust that this is right? Because I have a current way of doing things.
Which works.
Right, works. So I think the data exists. I think it gets created. I think the things that need to be true to unlock value is focus on value that can be unlocked, the damage prevention use case that we're working on, improve scheduling, some small things that you can build some adoption, and your stakeholders will say, oh, that wasn't too bad. I share that data, nothing bad happened, or good things happened. So I think it's already happening. I think we just have to continue to check our ambition a little bit, start small, build a trust and change cycle, learn from that, and go wider in the value chain, go back in time towards where you were kind of conceptualizing it, and then think forward in time so that when we're building an asset, you're leaving behind not 2D drawings in a manual, but a living, breathing digital replica that should give you superpowers in the operations space.
Speaking about superpowers, how can we tie this, hypothetically, but this replica, how could it help the cities with sustainability?
Yeah.
And there's so many things that the infrastructure is in risk when we're thinking of weather, more people, immigration.
Yeah, for sure. That's why we build this, right? We're like building infrastructures about growth and prosperity and keeping pace with the needs of the population, right? So another plug for TMU, I don't think anyone, this is another part of their research, which is about how are you instrumenting the built environment to give you insights on decarbonization, just overall sustainability. So I think that's already happening. I think when you think of it as a community, like when we build a hospital or a transit system, you're fundamentally changing the makeup of a neighborhoods. If you do this in the right way and you do think about interoperability, standards, not siloing the data, right? And this is my perspective. I think you then have the power to port those models in entirely different worlds. So there are companies out there that are thinking about how do you twin the entire globe and have sort of different risk models of sea level rise, temperature changes. When do you need the air conditioning to work? When it's at 50 degrees plus, and that's when it doesn't work, right? So how can you start to model these, what currently are going to be like, we'll call them fringe scenarios, but might very well not be fringe scenarios depending where the probability goes. So I think the power is, again, if you build it, we're not building this now for those use cases, but if you're building it in a way, again, through standards, interoperability, the twin assembles itself, it then gives you the power to think about, well, how do I imagine this asset in entirely different worlds? I might make different design decisions up front for resiliency and cost. Not because someone is telling me to do so out of compliance, but because it makes just good asset management sense, or from a risk management lens, it's the right thing to do.
Before we open up for questions, what is the biggest challenge that on your shoulders these days with infrastructure and digitization?
I think it comes down to change and adoption, like driving the change management.
So the human factor?
Yeah, I think it's we're all people, and it comes down to relationships and trust and like how do you introduce change? You do it, either abruptly and hard, and then mop up the carnage afterwards, or you do it soft in a way that drives change and adoption bottom up, and or trust and change bottom up. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenge, and then ensuring that we are focusing on areas where we can extract real value. So the proof of concept work that we did, that we're in right now, it was a bit of ready, fire, aim. Right? Let's just get started. Let's learn by doing. And the insights that we're capturing from that will allow us to take a more informed view of what's the value across the life cycle, what needs to happen to enable that value to be captured, and then what does a truly digitally twin enabled project look like in the future. So learn by doing, not ignoring the human factor. Yeah, those I think are the. I mean, there's other challenges. Maybe it'll come up in the questions. But security. How are you securing this data? Yes. Ownership, liability. The real to really get the value out of this. If I don't trust the data and I can't rely on it, I won't price that into anything I'm going to change, right? So getting that's why I brought up TMU. TMU is helping us solve for data governance issues, who owns the data. And also that will help inform some legal work that we have to do, because once we embed this into our contracts, how does a liability model work, right? I can trace back to an engineering stamp, but can I trace back to a live version of a utility asset management tag or somewhere? And if that's wrong, what happens? Right, so these are scenarios that we're going to have to work through, not reasons to not do it, but
have that in mind.
Yeah.
Okay, let's open up for questions. We have you and we have your colleague in the back. Any question for Amar?
I could start with one.
Yeah, go for it.
Less a question, more of an elaboration. I think you talked about this idea, so I have worked with I/O a lot. I used to work at Metrolinx.
Okay. Yes, of course. Yeah.
And this idea around trusting the data is really important, because when we talk about the commercial models and we kind of figure out risk transfer with the private sector, we can't even get them to agree to, that gas line that is actually shown on a drawing here from whatever, actually the gas company and so forth. So this idea, what does it actually look like in practice for us to try to build that trust so that we can actually share data, but not only share it, but actually use it in a way that's collaborative? We'll put the data out there. People will still pick and choose and cherry pick as they need it and use it. But your message here is we put it out there for everybody to use collectively and trust it the same way, right? So that we can gain the benefits of that. What does that look? How do we start to get there?
Like there is this mantra of shared contribution, shared benefit, right? Like if you're contributing to the data in a way that is interoperable and accessible, there should be in it. So, the utilities, asking the utilities to share. We already get the data from utilities. You're right. The drawing is there, but do I trust it? I don't know. There's got to be something in it for them if it's helping them advance their safety journey. So I think there's a way in which you can help unlock the data from their asset management plans or their asset management systems in a way that just becomes a little bit more accessible. But I think you're right. We're gonna bump into these issues about how right now it's more of an experiment. Mm-hmm. It's not embedded in the contract. It's not in our risk register about how. Let's take the utility risk. How does the twin environment or the access to that data fundamentally change how risk is shared?
Not even in the change management system. So all the players playing together, they haven't even bought into.
Yeah,
fact.
but I'm probably not giving you a crunchy answer, but
That's okay.
it's a good point to say the technology of this is probably the least complicated part.
Yeah.
The thing that drives value is digital trust, and then how you can trace it back to a contract so that you can price it in, or when something goes wrong, clarify how to deal with it. That's a great question.
Which has definitely been the theme all day long. Any questions from the room? We could talk all day because I'm a TMU alma mater, so I was about to
Me
get
too.
in there
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
But it's good to see you helping.
Okay.
No questions, okay?
Oh,
sorry.
Oh!
the very last
We
minute.
just gave them time to
Okay,
really
I
think
have
about
one
it.
question around the change management. You mentioned that tends to be one of your biggest challenges. Is there any strategies around how to enable change faster and properly to make sure the change and the people aspect of your organization can catch up with technology?
Yeah, so I'll give a quick 40-second countdown, but I'll give a quick example. On the work that we're doing around broadband, rural broadband deployments, that's where we injected change top-down. Regulatory SLAs for utilities and on permits and municipal, almost compelling data sharing to happen at the utility level and municipalities. That's where we actually intentionally created a change management capability to lead with the benefits, lead with the obligation, really ensure that the people in the permitting office, the people with the rolling the truck with that have the obligation to do the work, really understood the why. So I think leading with the why and really building out a capability to do that, not taking it lightly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Amar.
Thank you, Toby.
Thank you.
And thank you to Vid for moderating.